GST returns. And we have with us Pritam Mahure, CA. I would like to introduce to you to all Mr. Pritam Mahure. He is an internationally recognized speaker, writer, and advisor on GST, VAT, and how to be future-proof. Mr. Pritam has authored more than 15 books which provide practical advice on optimizing the GST. He is also invited columnist for leading media houses including Business Line, Asian Age, Business Standard, Deccan Herald, Economic Times, Times of Oman, etc. Mr. Pritam has addressed more than 200 conferences on GST, the VAT in India, UAE, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait for ICAI, CII, NASI, ASSOCHAM, NASOCOM, MCCIA, BCCIA, and BCCI. So we have such a learned expert from GST with us. So it would be a very informative and enriching webinar for all of us. So without wasting much time, I would like to welcome Mr. Pritam.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the kind words of introduction. So nice of you. So we are really thankful for this wonderful opportunity given to us, and we'll try to see that how we can learn together in this entire session, because there are certain points which could be of relevance to the department, as well as the same point could also be of relevance to the taxpayer. So in this journey, I think in the next 1 hour, let's try to learn as much as possible. I hope the screen is visible now.
Yes.
If yes, then we can proceed further. Wonderful. Thanks, sir. So friends, basically the points which we are going to discuss today is, I would say these points are your very first step in the direction towards saving interest and penalties. That's how I would like to put it. Because as a professional, what I believe, and at our firm, we always tell our team members that if the client is liable to make payment of interest or penalty, then practically we as a consultant, we are not doing our job at the best of our capabilities. Typically, the liability of interest and penalty arises when a taxpayer is not able to discharge his GST liability appropriately. So either the GST liability may not have been paid on the income side, or some incorrect input tax credit has been maybe availed, which is not eligible, or there can be certain compliance level gaps. So we are either looking at mitigating the risk on the input side, optimizing the credit so that incorrect input tax credit is not availed and right credit is availed, and finally looking at all the compliances. Because if these three things are taken care appropriately, practically in that particular client case or taxpayer case, particularly there should not be any interest or penalty whatsoever. And in that direction, let's start the discussion. Because when we look at the fact that the GST authorities will now be certainly around the corner, maybe because of pandemic, and also in the initial days, the government had given a clear mandate that for first 2 to 3 years, we will not come to your premises for GST review purposes. You can carry out your business, you can take your own tax positions, you can consult your tax consultant, and finally you pay GST appropriately. But maybe after 3 or 5 years, as the time progresses, we will come down and do a detailed review of your records, and that's what is provided under the audit provisions. But whether the tax authorities, that is GST department, comes for audit or not, I think as a tax professional, as a taxpayer, what is our responsibility at this particular point of time is basically ensuring that the returns which we are filing, if they are appropriately filed, then automatically there may not be any liability whatsoever in the detailed audit which would be carried out by the department. And that's the reason we thought, let us go through what are the critical points which all of us need to consider or check when we are preparing or filing our returns. And particularly because today is 7th July, so a very interesting date, I would say, 7/7, that is hum saath saath hai, that is what we can say. So it being a very interesting date, also it is a date which is prior to our GSTR1 and as well as GSTR3B for the month of June. I think these provisions, this discussion will certainly help you even in your next GSTR1 which is due, as well as GSTR3B. So friends, when it comes to the GST law, all of us are aware that we have to go through the act, the rules, all the other relevant notifications, circulars, press notes, GST Council minutes, as well as various case laws. Because unless and until you are having a hang over all these provisions, all the legal provisions, I would say, all the legislation including the case laws, we would not be in the best of our capabilities to either implement the law appropriately or even as a consultant advise our clients appropriately. And that's the reason we need to be having a complete hang around the GST legislation. When we talk about the GST law, friends, please note that in GST, because it's a transaction level tax, so unlike Income Tax Act, unlike income tax, in case of income tax, what happens? You are filing your income tax return at an annual level. So what you will do, you will compute your income tax liability at an annual level, whereas in case of GST, we are filing our GST returns on a monthly basis. So to that extent, friends, the interaction which GST law has with other aspects or other laws, I would say, is at much higher scale as compared to any other tax compliance. Second important aspect is income tax is typically at an annual level, whereas GST is computed, paid, and also reported at an invoice level. One can also say that it is a tax reporting at a transaction level. So if somebody is issuing more than 34,000 invoices in a year, then for him it is 34,000 line items, because he is expected to understand all the products which he is supplying, also apply the taxes appropriately in all the 34,000 invoices which he has issued. Maybe there are a couple of repetition, maybe only 10 or 20 products he is supplying, but still he has to ensure that when he is raising those invoices, he is appropriately paying the taxes. So that's the reason we have to say that GST is at a transaction or invoice level vis-a-vis other laws such as income tax, which might be at an annual level. And that's the reason, friends, as a tax professional, as a taxpayer, we need to ensure that when you are looking at financials, we have to, on a monthly basis, do a detailed trial balance review. Profit and loss account also, we should do a detailed check on a monthly basis. And finally, the notes or accounts, whenever they are prepared at the end of the year, we can have a review of those also, along with the annual data for GST returns. Further, friends, typically as a taxpayer, we need to ensure that all the types of contracts which we are entering into, because typically we are entering into 4 types of contract, I would say. One, with our customers. Second, with our vendors. Third, with our employees. And in some cases, we might also have contracts with our related persons, correct, or group companies. So these kind of contracts also we should keep a appropriate, they should be handy, and we need to ensure that we are reviewing those also. As I mentioned, that typically because GST is a transaction level tax, it also has some implication, and it is also connected with the other laws. So as a GST professional, we are expected to also have knowledge about maybe income tax law, FEMA, customs, factory acts also, and how it is relevant. I will touch upon that maybe at a subsequent slide, but you are also expected to have that knowledge also. And finally, ERP. As a taxpayer, whatever ERP you are using, maybe a ERP or accounting software, we need to ensure that these accounting software, these accounting policies which you are implementing in that particular software are in tune with the times. Because recently you would have heard that under the Companies Act, recently there was a notification which said that your accounting software should even have a track record of any changes which you are making in the accounting entries. So that means there should be a log even of the amendment which you are doing in the accounting entries. So practically this notification was not implemented from 1st of April 2021, but certainly it would be implemented in days to come. So even as a professional, as a taxpayer, you need to have even hang around, I would say, ERP as well. So friends, these things, then you will say that there are too many things, that when I am reviewing the returns, there are so many things. How can I keep hold of all the laws, all the practical things in the world? So for that purpose, we are trying to highlight that no, you are not expected to know each and every section of the GST Act, and for that matter, all the transaction or all other provisions. But you need to know some of the very critical or crucial provisions. And in that direction, this slide will give you a brief idea as to what are the most important provisions which all of us need to know as a taxpayer if you want to file your returns appropriately. The first and foremost section which comes to our mind is section 9. Section 9 practically talks about the charging section, because it's a charging section, it talks about charge. And this section says that GST is leviable on all supplies, that is intra-state supplies of goods or services or both. Please note, it is leviable on the value of a particular transaction, and it is to be paid at appropriate rates which the government has notified by various notifications, such as notification 1/2017 for goods and 11/2017 for services. Additionally, friends, when the GST law says under section 9 that GST is payable on all intra-state supplies, the first question which will come to our mind would be what is the meaning of the term supply? And in that context, section 7 gives us a guidance. It says supply for the purpose of this act, that is for the purpose of GST Act, it is defined in an inclusive manner. It says supply for the purpose of this act includes, and then it has various subclauses such as A, B, C, and then even 1A. And then if you are able to understand this section 7, because it is, I would say, drafted in a very simplistic manner because it's a definition which is inclusive, and then it says all forms of supply of goods or services or both such as sale, exchange, transfer, barter, lease, license, rental and disposal. So these 8 words it is being used in section 7. But this transaction of sale, transfer, barter should take place for a consideration, and this transaction should happen in the course or furtherance of business. So if these conditions are fulfilled, then practically the transaction will qualify as supply and GST would be payable. Friends, as we said that typically transactions which are made for a consideration are expected to be covered under section 7. However, the GST law also says that there are certain transactions which are not covered, which are, I would say, covered under schedule 1, but wherein the requirement of receiving consideration is not there. So irrespective of the fact whether there is a consideration or not, still you will be required to pay GST if your activity is covered under schedule 1 of GST law. Serial number 2 of schedule 1 of GST law talks about transactions with related person or distinct person. And if there is any transaction which you are carrying out with your related person or distinct person, then you have to see that even if there is no consideration, because if there is no consideration, typically those kind of transactions will not be reported under the GST law. And if that is the case, then practically please note, because the GST law is deeming this transaction practically as a supply transaction, you are also expected to pay GST in spite of the fact that you are not receiving any consideration. Then friends, section 12, 13, 14 will typically guide you for time of supply. Per se, these time of supply provisions are very similar to the point of taxation provision which we had under the erstwhile service tax regime. So if you are carrying that service tax regime experience, then practically section 12, 13, 14 would be a cakewalk for you. Then section 15 talks about value. When it comes to value, section 15 says that GST is payable on transaction value. And please note, friend, this word transaction value was also there under the excise law, and it is also mentioned under the customs law. So the government is saying that whatever is the value of the transaction which you are entering into with your unrelated person, correct? And if the price is the sole consideration, then that value would be accepted for the purpose of GST and you are expected to discharge GST on the same. Then section 16, 17, 18 is expected to guide you for claiming input tax credit. So section 16 tells you on what you can claim credit and what are the conditions and the restrictions for claiming credit. Section 17 talks about block credit because you are not expected to avail each and every input tax credit which you are getting on your expenditures, correct? So you are not entitled to claim each and every credit because there are certain expenditures on which you are not expected to claim credit. Section 18 is a special provision. We will discuss that separately. And finally, friends, if there is any short payment or non-payment or delayed payment in case of GST, then typically section 73, 74 may get attracted. 73, all of you are aware, talks about normal cases when the time period is prescribed as 3 years. 74 talks about fraud related cases wherein the time period might get extended up to 5 years from the last date of filing your annual returns. So I would say 73 and 74, these are the provisions which are very much similar to the erstwhile service tax provisions or excise provisions which were there. So with this, friends, if you are able to get hold of all these sections, then practically you would be in a position at your best of your capabilities to ensure that you are filing your GST R1, 3B and you are doing your GST compliances appropriately. So let's get now to the granular level, friends. That was at a macro level. Now let's try to go at a micro level. First, let us understand in GST R1, what are we reporting? GST R1, friends, all of you are aware, GST R1 is your sales return or outward supply return, wherein all of us are reporting taxable income. We are also reporting zero rated income, zero rated supply income. So basically zero rated income means your export of services or your export of goods. There might be certain income which you are earning, which might qualify as the exempt income. Exempt income means on which there is no GST which is payable. If there is no GST which is payable on exempt income, typically all of you are aware that you are not also entitled to claim any input tax credit on the same. Then there might be some non-GST income. Non-GST income means you might be a company who is also having, let us say, petrol pump, or you are a restaurant and you are supplying liquor. Now, typically liquor, all of you are aware, is subjected to a state level duty and state level VAT. Now, in such cases, because you are not paying any GST on supply of liquor, practically you are not expected to claim input tax credit to that extent. So there might be some income which is non-GST income, which you might be earning, and to that extent, the input tax credit might get restricted. Friends, please note, there are certain income which are exempted income, such as interest. But in such cases, even if you are earning interest, input tax credit reversal liability may not trigger. So you are not expected to reverse any input tax credit to that extent. So you'll have to understand what is exempt income, non-GST income, and whether I am supposed to reverse input tax credit to that extent. The next important aspect is, friend, HSN summary. In the last couple of, I would say, months, and even before that also, the GST department has always been very vocal about the fact that the taxpayer are expected to mention HSN number. Friend, if you go back to your excise era days, you'll be able to recall that in case of excise era, the taxpayer was expected to mention 8-digit HSN number. However, when we ventured into GST, because even the trader community was brought under the GST regime, in the initial days, in the initial years, the government did not harp on the fact that about HSN. However, from 1st of April, these provisions have undergone a change and you are expected to mention HSN. And that is where the HSN summary would be very handy for all of you if you are mentioning HSN appropriately. Friends, please note that HSN stands for Harmonized System of Nomenclature. That is the tariff entry, typically as it is referred as. And based on the tariff entry, you are expected to pay GST appropriately. Friends, if your product is covered under, say, 18% category, and if you are unfortunately paying GST at the rate of 5%, please note there would be a huge risk of liability coming on your business at the rate of 13%. That's the reason appropriately classifying the product becomes one of the biggest responsibility on the shoulders of the taxpayer, I would say. And then finally, friends, even in the GST R1, you are expected to issue or submit with the government basically the list of documents which you are issuing. That is all the GST R1 and all related documents. Then, friends, after 11th of the subsequent month, you will also file your GSTR 3B on 20th of the subsequent month. In GSTR 3B, basically this is your return for your sales or outward sale data as well as your input tax credit. Because what is the GST return? The final GST return is basically your outward GST liability reduced by your input tax credit which you are having, and then you are expected to pay the remaining liability in cash. So you are having your output tax liability in GSTR 3B which you are reporting. If you are importing goods, you are expected to claim credit of IGST on import of those goods. So that is also mentioned in the GSTR 3B. Then your reverse charge liability, because there are certain expenditures such as advocate fees, maybe sponsorships. In such cases, you are expected to pay GST liability and the reverse charge. And in case you are making any foreign payments, in case you are making any payment to non-resident service providers, you are also expected to pay GST and a reverse charge under import of services. So that is your RCM liability. Friends, all of you are aware that RCM liability cannot be discharged. It cannot be paid through credit. You have to pay that in cash first, and then you have to see are you entitled to claim input tax credit or not. And finally, friends, as we discussed, that typically you are entitled to claim input tax credit. However, it is subject to certain conditions and restrictions, as well as Section 17 provides certain restrictions on availment of input tax credit. For example, if you are buying a car, typically credit of the same would not be available. So friends, this is at a macro level, again I would say at GSTR 1 and 3B. Now let us understand one by one as to when you are reviewing your taxable supplies, correct? When you are reviewing your GSTR return, when you are filing your GSTR returns, what are the things which you should check? Because these are the points which even the GST authorities are expected to check. And if you really want to ensure that you are on the right side of the law, then I think before the GST authorities are doing the needful, that is coming and checking the records, I think you should also do the same without instead of waiting for the authorities to show at your door and then reviewing the records. So friend, when it comes to taxable supply, the first point which we need to understand is what is the nature of my supply. Am I supplying pure goods? Am I supplying pure services? For example, pure services and pure goods, I will give you example. If you are selling laptops, then you are only selling laptop, that's it, correct? It might be a scenario that you are supplying a service, such as a chartered accountant, we are only giving services. But there might be certain scenarios wherein you are supplying two things together. For example, you are supplying goods, that is solar panels, and you are also providing a service of installation of solar panels. Now friends, please note that there is a huge debate which was ongoing in 1718 and 1819 regarding the fact that if somebody is supplying solar panels and also installing the same, because the installation happens on a piece of land, because the transaction can be said to be connected with a piece of land, it was said that this is a composite supply, it's a works contract. Then you will say, what is the implication? Friends, please note, as far as solar panels are concerned, the rate of GST is only 5%. As far as service component is concerned, the rate of GST is 18%. But if the transaction qualifies as a works contract, then the problem is that on the entire contract, there is a risk that the GST at the rate of 18% might be chargeable or payable. That is what there are certain advanced ruling which said the same thing. So if you are entering into a contract for supplying solar panel worth say 1 crore rupees and there is a service component of only 10 lakh rupees in that case. So your entire contract is of 1 crore and 10 lakh, but because it's a mixed contract, because it's a composite supply, you are supplying both the things together, the fundamental question might arise, are you engaged in the activity of works contract? Because friends, all of you are aware that if a transaction qualifies as a works contract under section 2 subclause 119 of the GST law, then as per schedule 2 serial number 6A, the said transaction is expected to qualify as a service. And all of you are aware that in case of a service, the rate of GST would be 18% on the entire 1 crore and 10 lakh in the example which you discussed. And that's the reason, friend, you need to understand what is the exact nature of the supply which you are making. There might be few other example or scenario also. You might be supplying, say, Ayurvedic product, which is chargeable at the rate of just 12%. However, along with that Ayurvedic product, you are giving a chocolate free, correct? So you are supplying a product which is Ayurvedic product, and just to ensure that you are getting more sales, correct? People should buy a higher quantity of those goods. You are ending up giving a chocolate, correct, free of cost. Now, there might be a question on the part of the department that this transaction is basically mixed supply because chocolates attract GST at the rate of 18%. And that's the reason, friend, as we said, that before you understand exactly what is the rate of tax which is applicable for your product, we need to first understand basically what is the exact nature of my supply. Am I supplying pure goods or services, or am I doing a composite or mixed supply? Then friends, if you come to a conclusion that no, I'm not supplying two things together, I'm only supplying one thing, that is say a particular goods, then you need to understand what is the rate of tax which is applicable on those particular set of goods. We have in the recent time came across certain situations wherein some of the products which were being supplied by a particular taxpayer, they had an understanding that their product classifies as an Ayurvedic product. They were in the business of say supplying Ayurvedic tea. Now whether tea is an Ayurvedic product or whether it's a tea only, correct? Because if you say it is Ayurvedic product, the rate of tax might be 12%. If you say it is a tea, the rate of tax may be 18%. And that is, friend, before you take a final call, when you are paying GST, on your product, you need to appropriately classify your products. Friends, please note that in the earlier times, we had our own excise tariff. It was a detailed tariff which was based on the erstwhile HSN, which was presented by the World Customs Organization. So it was a detailed tariff which we had in our hands, and we used to go through the same and then understand what is the exact classification of our product. However, in the GST law, please note that such kind of a tariff is right now missing. However, if you refer to the notification 1/2017, it says for the purpose of classification, we are expected to refer to the customs tariff. So maybe before you decide and before you pay, GST may be at the rate of 5%, 12%, that is a lower rate of GST if you are applying on your product. And in certain cases, even if you are paying GST only at the rate of at the full rate, that is 18%, still in such cases you are expected to understand whether my product is covered under the higher rate of tax. Because you are paying 18%, you will say yes, I am fully appropriately paying GST. But please note, it might happen that the rate of product which is applicable for your product might be 28% because it might be automobile parts. Correct? So you need to be very much aware about the right classification. Additionally, friends, in some cases we have also come across situation wherein the rate of tax for that particular product was only 5%. However, the taxpayer, unfortunately, because of incorrect guidance, he was paying GST at the rate of 18%. Now you will say, what is the problem? Because the rate of tax is 5% and he is paying 80%. What is the problem department is going to have? Friends, please note that the tax authorities will say that you are trying to utilize your input tax credit which you are having. Because of the wrong classification, you are trying to pay more credit and you are trying to pass on the credit to the customer. And in such cases, I think even the recipient's record might be opened because he is availing incorrect input tax credit. And that's the reason, friend, paying appropriate GST at appropriate rate, I think is the biggest responsibility on the shoulders of the taxpayer, and they need to fulfill this appropriately before the GST authorities visit their premises. Then, friends, typically we have come across that when you are paying GST liability, I think as far as time of supply provision is concerned, we haven't come across much dispute, except in certain scenarios or certain set of taxpayers, such as if you are a works contractor, if you are a developer. In such cases, because you are expected to pay GST as per time of supply, correct? That is as per your agreement. In such cases, we have seen that sometimes the taxpayer may not be paying appropriately the taxes, not within due date. And that's the reason, if you are a works contractor, developer, you should ensure that you are paying GST liability appropriately under section 12 and 13 of the GST law. Friend, when it comes to a taxable supply, place of supply provisions are also very critical. I will give you a simple example and let me ask you this question. If Pritam Maure, as an individual, if I am having say commercial premises in Gujarat, correct? So I am having a commercial premises in Gujarat and I want to rent it out, and the rent per month for the property is say 5 lakh per month. Now because I am from Maharashtra, the property is in Gujarat and the property is taken on rent by somebody in Gujarat. Now I have an interesting question for all of you. What is the place of supply and what type of GST should I charge on this particular transaction? A very simple, straightforward question. I am from Maharashtra, immobile properties in Gujarat. So should I charge IGST on the transaction or should I charge CGST, HGST? So should I obtain registration in Gujarat and charge CGST, HGST, or should I charge IGST on this transaction to my tenant? So friends, please note there is no negative marking. So any one of you can answer. Even you can mention in the chat box. Feel free to answer. There is no negative marking, so you need not worry. I think most of you would like to understand the answer, so I would share with you. In our view, friends, in such kind of a transaction, typically IGST would be payable because I am located in Maharashtra and the property is located in Gujarat. However, please note, there is a possibility that the Gujarat authorities might say that because the property is located in Gujarat, the taxpayer should obtain a registration for that property and he should charge CGST and HGST for the same. Friends, however, we as a professional have a view, and maybe the authorities may or may not agree on this particular point, but we have a view that typically in such cases IGST chargeable and registration liability may not trigger. You are not expected to obtain registration in each and every state where you are having a premises, because when it comes to a fixed establishment, there is a specific definition which is given under the GST law, IGST law, that is section 2 subclause 7, which says fixed establishment should be characterized by the fact that there should be even a human resource who is engaged in activity of providing that particular service. Now, because we don't have a presence in Gujarat, correct, as a professional, as I mentioned, we have only presence in Maharashtra. So we can take a view that in such cases IGST would be chargeable. So friend, that was about the taxable supply. Now let us proceed. There might be a scenario wherein as a tax professional, or as a taxpayer, you would come across scenario wherein the taxpayer is engaged into the activity of export of services or export of goods. Now, if you are engaged into the activity of export of services, all of you are aware that GST law under section 2 subclause 6, IGST Act, section 2 subclause 6, talks about 5 conditions which you are expected to fulfill before you say that the transaction will qualify as export of services. As far as export of goods are concerned, I would say it is not that difficult to determine whether a transaction qualifies as export or not, because physically the goods, if they go out of the country and if you receive consideration in foreign exchange, to that extent you need not worry. But in case of export of services, you are expected to fulfill multiple conditions, including the fact that the place of supply of that particular transaction should be outside the country. Typically, all of you are aware, section 13 talks about the fact that the place of supply is location of the recipient. However, in certain cases, particularly if you are acting as an intermediary, or if the service is with respect to certain goods on which you are doing some activity, then in such cases, the place of supply might be considered to be location, that is where the activity is performed. And to that extent, if you are engaged in such kind of activity, that you are an intermediary or you are performing certain activity on goods which are being made available to you by the recipient, then in such cases, the condition to qualify a transaction as export may not get fulfilled. And that's the reason, friend, if in your return, if you are showing something that zero rated supply, please ensure that on a regular basis you are checking that you are fulfilling this condition. Additionally, we have also seen that in case of export of services, zero rated supplies, typically a taxpayer might also be receiving certain reimbursement. If he is receiving reimbursement, you are expected to understand basically whether the reimbursement would be considered as an independent transaction or whether it is part of that export of services transaction itself. Because if it is so, then practically the transaction will qualify as export of services because reimbursement does not have an independent existence, correct? But if it is an independent transaction, you will also are expected to understand whether this reimbursement transaction will again qualify as zero rated transaction or not. Additionally, friends, you are aware that typically the consideration which you are receiving, it should be received within the prescribed time limit of FEMA. Additionally, the consideration should be received in foreign currency, that is, you are expected to have a FIRC copy of the same. If you have received the consideration in Indian currency, because the transaction will not get qualified as export, then the next issue would be whether you would be expected to pay 18% GST on the same. Friends, I would say as a professional, this point is debatable. In case you are not receiving consideration in foreign currency, at max, this transaction may qualify as exempted supply or a transaction wherein there is no GST liability, and to that extent your input tax credit might get questioned, exactly similar to the service tax law. However, we are aware that as far as GST authorities or GST department is concerned, the basic perspective which GST authorities are having, that if your transaction is not qualifying as export, then you are expected to pay GST at the rate of 18% on the same. Friends, during the corona times, I think all of us are experiencing certain financial challenges. Similarly, it might happen that your customer who is located outside the country, he might also be experiencing the same. And because of that, some of the transactions which you have showcased as export of services in the last couple of years, it might become bad debt. And if that becomes so, if you don't receive consideration in foreign currency from your customer who are located outside the country, then you will have to check whether the transaction will qualify or continue to qualify as export transaction or not. And if it does not, then there might be a risk of GST liability triggering on the same. Friends, when you are looking at your GST returns, apart from checking the taxable supply, zero rated supply, you are also expected to check certain transactions which typically are missed by the taxpayer. And couple of transactions we have listed out for the benefit of all. One particular transaction we have seen, which is typically missed out during reporting of GSTR1 or GSTR3B, is basically income which is set off against expenses. So for example, you are having 10 lakh rupees as your rental income, but at the same time, you are also having 90 lakh rupees as your rental expenses, correct? So sometimes what people do, 90 lakh rupees is my rental expenditure and 10 lakh is income. So I will set up this and I will show 80 lakh only as my expenditure. So 90 lakh expenditure minus 10 lakh. And because of that setup being taken place in the accounting records, typically this 10 lakh rupees income will not be reflected on the profit and loss account credit side. And that's the reason people miss this transaction. So as a taxpayer, when you are reviewing your records, just check whether there is any such kind of setup which has taken place in the records, and if so, if there is any income which you are trying to set up against expenditure, then just ensure that you are looking at that transaction appropriately and ensuring that if there is any GST liability, then it is paid. If there is any liability on the same, it should be paid. Additionally, friends, we have also seen that in some cases, typically for say out-of-pocket expenses, reimbursement purposes, a taxpayer may not be raising a tax invoice. He might be raising debit notes, and because these debit notes are not reflected in the financial statement, because he might be raising a debit note and receiving it, so there is a 100 rupees debit note which is received 100 rupees and it is nullified then. Practically it is not reflected as income in the financial record. Then in such cases again, the transaction may not be appropriately reflected in the GST R1 and 3B, and it is likely to be missed. And that's the reason, friend, if there is any such kind of transaction which is taking place, just ensure that you are appropriately paying GST on the same. Further, friends, we have seen that there are a couple of, I would say, types of recoveries which are the amounts which are recovered from the employees. For example, you might be recovering, let's say, from the employee, some late fee charges if he is coming late, or maybe some other penalties which you are charging our employees. If he is missing his visiting cards, employee cards, correct? Then you are recovering some amount from him. There might be a notice pay recovery also, which you are recovering from your employees. Then in all such cases, the basic question comes whether these incomes, correct, are basically subjected to GST. Friends, on this particular aspect, there are two views which are possible. One view says that all such recoveries are subjected to GST. And another view says, based on certain High Court judgments, such as there is a judgment in the case of GET&D India, wherein it was said that notice pay recoveries are not subjected to GST, correct? So you have to evaluate what is the quantum, what is the amount of recovery which you are doing from your employee, and then you will have to decide whether GST is appropriately payable or not on the same, because you will have to first understand the amount, type of recovery, and based on the judgment which we just shared with you, GET&D India, you'll have to come to a conclusion, should you pay GST appropriately or not on the same. Friends, typically as a professional, we say that if the amount are not much, then it is much better to pay GST on the same, because it is very difficult nowadays to litigate. So much better to pay and close the matter. Then friends, we have also come across scenarios wherein substantial amount of penalties are being recovered from the vendors. We have, in certain cases, we have come across that more than couple of crores worth penalties were recovered from the vendors. Again, herein the basic question comes whether penalties would be subjected to GST or not. If the amounts are substantial, we always recommend to the taxpayer that go through the contract, understand the nature of penalties, and then determine whether it is actually a penalty in nature, that is what you are recovering, or is it a consideration for something. Because if the transaction will qualify as a consideration for something, then there might be a GST liability which will trigger. Friends, apart from this transaction, all of us are also expected to understand that as a company, whether we are providing any free of cost supplies to the employee. And why this is important? Because all of you are aware that employer and employee are considered to be related person for the purpose of GST law. That is what explanation to section 15 says. And if that is being so, any transaction with related party, we have to scrutinize. And even if the transaction is without consideration, as we discussed, Schedule 1 says, even if the transaction is without consideration, but because it is with a related party, there might be a GST liability which might trigger. And that reason, friend, if you are making any free of cost supplies to your employees, for that matter, you should ensure that to review the same. Additionally, friends, there might be many other items also. For example, there might be some damaged goods or waste or scrap which you are selling. You should ensure that if there is any GST liability on the same, you should pay the same. Then there might be some transactions such as some actionable claims, such as maybe insurance money which you have received. So on the income side, on the actionable claim, insurance money, there is no GST liability. But you should check if the goods are lost in the process, then whether section 17 subclass 5 subclass H will trigger. Because in such cases, if the goods are lost, the input tax credit also as per the GST law is lost. Friends, all of you are aware that if you are having a branch outside the state, then in such cases, you are expected to discharge GST liability on any inter-branch transfer which is outside the state. In some cases, we have come across situations wherein within the state of Maharashtra also, people have obtained separate GST registration numbers. In such cases, these GST numbers, even if they are within the same state, they would be considered or treated as distinct persons. And if there is any supply between these distinct persons of say goods or services, then you are expected to appropriately value the transaction and pay GST on the same. Friends, please note that in some cases, we have come across barter transactions wherein GST liability is typically missed out or not paid. And these transactions typically take place in a manner wherein if I am working for say a particular company, say I am a multiplex, correct? And we are a bankers. So what the banker will do that, okay, in your multiplex, we will put a particular banner, correct, advertisement banner, and the same banner of your multiplex can be put in our bank branch also. So it's a barter transaction. It is not recognized. It is not mentioned in the financials. However, if this kind of transactions are being done on a barter basis, and we came across a good number of agreements for such kind of transactions when we were dealing with a couple of our clients, then practically a basic question would be asked would be, these are barter transactions, so whether GST is payable on the same or not. So friends, in this regard, please note, if you go through section 7, which we discussed just a couple of minutes ago, which talks about supply. In section 7 subclass 1, barter transaction is specifically mentioned because section 7 subclass 1 says all forms of supply such as goods or service or both, such as, and then it says sale, transfer, barter. So even barter transaction under GST law is liable to GST. So unlike VAT law, because under VAT law there was a basic debate whether barter transactions are liable or not. Please note, in case of GST law, barter transactions are specifically covered under the ambit of supply. So to that extent, there might be a GST liability which might trigger on the same. Friends, apart from these kind of transactions, there might be some exceptional or one-off a transaction or transaction which are typically, I would say, reported at an annual level. So because we are in the month of July now, and almost most of the companies would have completed their financial audit or review, and their balance sheet or financials would be signed in a couple of days, or it would have already been signed. What all of us need to do is basically we should take the financial year 2021 and look at the fact that are there any transactions which are missed by us on a monthly basis. So there might be some MEI, scrip sale, some export incentive, because whether this transaction qualifies exempted supply or not, that you are expected to see. Then further, you should also check in the director report if there is any foreign exchange gain, loss, correct? Because you'll be able to understand what is the foreign exchange revenue which you are earning, for what you are earning, whether the transaction qualifies export or not, what are the foreign exchange expenditure which you are reflecting, whether on those transactions appropriate reverse charge liability is paid or not, correct? Similarly, there might be some bad debt which might be mentioned in your balance sheet or financials. You should go and check whether there is any input tax credit reversal should be undertaken for the same. First, whether it is applicable, and if yes, whether it should be done by you or not. Additionally, friends, on an annual basis, we also share with our taxpaying clients that they should also check whether there is any incorrect payment of tax. So you might say that we are paying GST, but you are paying IGST on a transaction which is qualifying as an intrastate transaction. To make payment of CGST and HGST, but you are making payment of IGST or vice versa. Per se, as a tax professional, if you ask us, we would say that there is no wrong thing which you have done, because in both the cases the tax rate is remaining same. However, all of you are aware that under the GST law, in the CGST Act there is section 77, under the IGST Act there is section 19, which says that if you are making wrong payment of tax, that is you are paying CGST, HGST instead of IGST or vice versa, then the law says you are expected to make right payment of tax again and claim refund of the old incorrect tax which you have paid by you. So friend, certainly if that is the scenario, then you are in a, I would say, a very difficult position. So just ensure on an annual basis that you are revisiting your tax position, that if you are paying IGST, actually IGST should be payable on that particular transaction instead of CGST and HGST. So friend, additionally, apart from this, we have also come across certain transaction wherein people do reflect that transaction appropriately as zero rated supply. So they are engaged into the activity of export of services, and they are showing that transaction appropriately as export of services. They are receiving consideration in foreign currency also. However, we have come across situations wherein people have not filed their letter of undertaking. All of you are aware that on an annual basis, we are expected to file a LUT with the government of India. And it's an online process, very easy process. So if any one of you is expected to file LUT, and if you are not filed LUT, then we will recommend that you should do it at the earliest. Then apart from income, you are also expected to check your input tax credit when you are filing your 3B. Typically, we have seen that input tax credit is claimed by the taxpayer almost on all the items which are appearing in 2A, which is an incorrect method, I would say, because there might be certain scenarios wherein you are not entitled to claim certain input tax credit. For example, if the goods are lost, stolen, written off, destroyed, then in such cases, you are not expected to claim the input tax credit under section 17, subclause 5, subclause H. Further, if you don't make payment to your vendor within 180 days, then as per section 16, you are expected to reverse that input tax credit. And whenever you make that payment to the vendor, you are expected to reclaim that credit again. Further, friends, there might be a scenario wherein you are receiving goods in installment. So, couple of goods you have received, that is a machinery. Part of the installment is received in this month, and part of the installment is received in the next month. That is, the goods are being supplied. Maybe a big crane is being supplied to you in CKD part. In such cases, the GST law says you are expected to claim input tax credit when the entire consignment is received by you, that is in the subsequent month. So you should also ensure that all these conditions are being appropriately fulfilled by you. Because if you don't, then typically input tax liability you will have to reverse along with interest, and also penal consequences might follow. Friends, if you are engaged into the activity of taxable supply as well as exempted supply, all of you are aware, on a monthly basis you are expected to reverse input tax credit. Further, because right now in the month of July, your annual records might have been finalized, you are also expected to look at the transaction again, and based on annual basis, you should again review and check whether any additional liability will trigger or not. Then finally, friend, reverse charge mechanism. All of you are aware that typically as a taxpayer, you are expected to make payment of GST on your income side. However, under certain scenarios, on certain expenses, you are expected to pay liability on reverse charge basis. This reverse charge, I would say, can be categorized under two baskets. One, domestic reverse charge. Second, import reverse charge. In case of domestic reverse charge, all of you are aware, maybe there might be a legal services which you are availing from advocate. There might be sponsorship services. There might be director fees which you are making payment to independent director. In all such cases, reverse charge liability will trigger. In the year 2017-18, up to I think 13th October 2017, the government had said that if you are receiving any supply from unregistered people, correct, that is URD supplier, then you are expected to pay GST under reverse charge mechanism. However, from 13th of October 2017, this provision was removed. However, all of you are aware that this provision is again reintroduced for developers if your procurement from unregistered players goes above 20%. Additionally, friends, apart from domestic reverse charge, there is also concept of import reverse charge. So if you are making any payment to your non-resident service provider, you are expected to pay GST liability appropriately on such expenditures. Friends, please note that if there is a transaction which you are having with your related party which is located outside India, and they are not charging you any amount, but there is any service which they are providing, in such cases, all of you are aware that even if there is no payment which is being made by you to the non-resident that is located outside the country, but because they are related party, in such cases, reverse charge liability might trigger on you. We have come across recently a transaction wherein there was a guarantee which was given by the parent company which was located outside the country, and no amount was charged for the subsidiary which was within country. And in such cases, now the basic fundamental issue which is being raised is whether any GST liability will trigger on such kind of transaction on a reverse charge basis. Friends, apart from reviewing on a monthly basis, I would say GSTR 1 and 3B, you should also check not only on a monthly basis but also on an annual basis certain I would say documents as well as certain reconciliations. So Now for 2021, you can carry out a detailed turnover reconciliation and you can keep it handy because GSTR1, GSTR3B has certainly made our life, I would say, to some extent a bit complicated because आपको every month आपको जो भी आप ट्रायल बैलेंस आपका है मंथली ट्रायल बैलेंस उसके साथ रिकंसिलेशन रखना ही है लेकिन जीएसटीआर 1 का आपका 3बी का रिकंसिलेशन होना चाहिए 1 3बी का आपका जीएसटीआर 9 से रिकंसिलेशन होना चाहिए 9 का 9सी से होना चाहिए अभी गोइंग फॉरवर्ड 9 से एप्लीकेबल नहीं है इवन 2021 से जीएसटीआर 9 से एप्लीकेबल नहीं है लेकिन फिर भी हो सकता है आपका टीडीएस कट रहा है आप सर्विस प्रोवाइडर हो तो 26 ईयर्स के साथ भी आपका रिकंसिलेशन होना चाहिए करेक्ट सो आई थिंक देयर आर कपल ऑफ रिकंसिलेशन विच आर एक्सपेक्टेड टू मेंटेन ये सब अरिथमेटिक एक्यूरेसी है अभी तक हम जो डिस्कस कर रहे थे पिछले कुछ स्लाइड में दीज पॉइंट्स आर बेसिकली कमिंग फ्रॉम लीगल एक्यूरेसी बट अभी हम जो पॉइंट डिस्कस कर रहे हैं रिकंसिलेशन वगैरह का आई वुड से दैट इज बेसिकली अरिथमेटिक एक्यूरेसी apart from the legal and arithmetic accuracy all of you are also expected to ensure that if there are any procedural compliances which you are expected to follow then even you should fulfill the same जैसा हो सकता है कि ईवे बिल आपको इश्यू करना है तो अप्रोप्रिएटली इश्यू करना चाहिए जॉब वर्क रिलेटेड कंप्लायंसेस कुछ हो सकते हैं रिसीट वाउचर रिफंड वाउचर सेल्फ इनवॉइसेस रिवर्स चार्ज के केस में आपको इश्यू करने हैं तो ऑल ऑफ यू शुड डू द सेम फर्दर बहुत बार हमने देखा है कि जीएसटी रजिस्ट्रेशन सर्टिफिकेट टैक्स पेयर अपडेट नहीं करते हैं तो आपका 2017 में जो रजिस्ट्रेशन सर्टिफिकेट है वो वैसा ही रहता है तो हो सकता है कि आपने प्रीमाइसेस चेंज कर दिए कोरोना के टाइम में आपने कुछ जो ओल्ड वाला प्रीमाइसेस था उसको खाली कर दिया 5 प्रीमाइसेस थे अभी आपके बॉम्बे में 3 ही प्रीमाइसेस में आप ऑक्युपाइड हो 2 प्रीमाइसेस खाली कर दिए तो आपको जो भी एडिशनल प्रीमाइसेस या आपने चेंज कर दिया प्रीमाइसेस या आपने रिमूव कर दिया तो आपका जो भी रजिस्ट्रेशन का डेटा है मुझे लगता है वो आपने अप्रोप्रिएटली अपडेट करना चाहिए प्लस अगर ई इनवॉइस प्रोसीजर अगर आपको अप्लीकेबल हो गया ई इनवॉइसिंग तो 1 अप्रैल 2021 से आपको पता है 50 करोड़ के जो अबो टैक्स पेयर है उनको अप्लीकेबल है तो यू आर एक्सपेक्टेड टू इशू अप्रोप्रिएट इनवॉइसेस आल्सो अगर आप कुछ एग्जाम्प्टेड सप्लाई दे रहे हो बिल ऑफ सप्लाई दे रहे हो तो यू आर एक्सपेक्टेड टू इशू अ बिल ऑफ सप्लाई अप्रोप्रिएटली विथ द रिस्पेक्टिव कंटेंट तो विद दिस फ्रेंड वी आर ऑलमोस्ट थ्रू विथ आवर सेशन मुझे लगता है अभी 5 बज गए हैं तो व्हाट वी विल डू practically we can have a couple of minutes free for Q&A if there is any question which you are having if not then we can proceed for closure for the session ये जो सेशन का जो presentation है we will share with Mumbai Commissionerate and then separately they can share the same with all of you so typically friends it is said that if a person is delivering a lecture you should thank him but I personally believe that all of you are attending through webinar and if you are patiently listening to the speaker then I think as a speaker it is our responsibility to thank all of you for patiently listening to us so thank you all thanks you are wonderful audience thanks
Thank you very much Pritam ji. If anyone has any question they can ask in the chat box and if it's not we can move towards vote of thanks and thank you for this wonderful session you have covered almost many of the nitty gritties of the tax and as we